sexual content. Parental discretion is advised. Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, she swears she was tortured.
In that garage, I was held captive.
But the children who survived that house of horrors...
She was able to eat while my father starved us.
...claim she's lying.
She was not held captive.
No.
She was not abused.
No.
For the first time.
Laura was a part of what my dad was doing to us.
They're wrong.
They're speaking out.
You had your time to talk. It's our time. It's our time.
It was called one of the most notorious child abuse cases in California history. This is the first time we have ever had so many survivors of abuse together on one show. These are the children from one family. All of them adults now, all of them with a shared history of unimaginable horror. Some had their head wounds sewn up with a needle and thread. Others were hung upside down with a rope tied in a military knot. They were even made to stand in a circle and physically fight each other. One child was reportedly forced to eat her own feces. The man held responsible for these depraved acts, their own father, Mansa Musa Muhummed, who is now serving 7 consecutive life sentences for 7 counts of torture, 11 counts of felony child abuse, 5 counts of infliction of corporal injury on a spouse, and 2 counts of felony false imprisonment. He was eventually caught and convicted after his spiritual wife, Laura, passed a note to a postal worker who then alerted authorities.
Cowan's story made national headlines. It's a twisted tale of kidnapping, torture.
Back in the 90s, Laura's husband locked her and her children in this garage for months, where he beat, starved, and tortured them.
This morning, we are meeting a survivor and an inspiration to so many.
I knew we were going to die.
Laura Cowan will share her story with details never before revealed in a half-hour show on the Discovery Channel.
He started actually nailing the door shut to make sure that we didn't come out. He raped me.
Can you explain what makes somebody stay?
I know, and it's everybody asks, why do women stay? And it's so many different reasons. It's not just one.
For the first time, we'll hear from 8 of Mansa Musa Muhammed's children, plus 1 of his 3 wives, for an exclusive interview with the family who was in a house of torture for years of their lives. They've come together to speak out here on this stage for the first time ever.
When I first met Mansa, he was very charming, very kind. I was in a difficult situation. I needed a place for my 2 children, so I moved in with Mansa, his wife, and his 13 children. Mansa practiced polygamy, and he wanted me to be one of his wives. Mansa was a very religious man, a very strict Muslim. I, too, was a devout Muslim. He ruled his house with fear and discipline.
Our living conditions were like a concentration camp. We were on complete lockdown. The doors were locked. The windows were locked. I wasn't even allowed to go to school.
Mansa made the children learn all the Quranic verses. And if they didn't, he would beat them and punish them.
All I knew was abuse.
He would lock us in the basement for days at a time. He would beat us. He would slam me against the walls and beat my hands and my feet. I remember a time my dad took a boat paddle and just cracked me straight across the head. Blood was everywhere. He got a needle and thread and stitched my head back up.
Living in his house was like a house of torture. Mansa would starve the children.
When he would decide to feed us, we would vomit the food right back up. He would then make us eat our vomit.
Mansa would have the children eat their own feces.
I was raped by my father on a daily basis for 12 years.
I was raped twice by Mansa. After I was raped, I found out I was pregnant. I had a baby girl. Mansa went off the deep end, and he locked me and my 2 children up in that garage, and he took my baby away. I was locked in that garage for over 6 months. They had no running water, no bathroom. I felt we were going to die in there. One day, Mansa took me with him to run errands, and we went to the post office. I slipped a note to the postal worker just pleading for help, that someone would find us. When those police finally arrived, this nightmare, torture, and captivity was over.
Well, in a minute, we'll hear from those children, all adults now, who were trapped in that house of torture. But first, we'll meet the woman who was part of that rescue at the post office. Now, you would think the children would be grateful to be saved. But surprisingly, they detest Laura, their father's second wife, who they feel was in cahoots with Mansa Musa Muhummed. They think she has hijacked their story by pretending to be a victim herself. Let's have her come out now and we'll hear her story. Dr. Phil.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
Watch your step right here.
Yes,
we have a step for you.
Thank you very much.
You referred to him as Musa, right?
Correct.
How did you meet?
He was an acquaintance of my husband. He would come around to the restaurant that we owned, and I met him that way.
How long did you know him before you actually struck up a relationship with him?
Him and his children and wife were staying in a motel at the time. And I had financial troubles because our restaurant had to close. And that's when he had thought of a great idea. He said, you know, why don't you we move in together? He was so helpful, and I was so grateful for him. And later on, it started to change and develop more.
So how long were you with him total?
4 years.
4 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how long were you there before you said, wow, something's not right here?
To be honest with you, I say in the very beginning, but I kind of closed my eyes to a lot of things because the way he disciplined his children, I just kind of stayed out of it.
You say you began to notice that the kids were sneaking food.
Yes. In the middle of the night, a lot of the children would steal food from the cabinet or the refrigerator if it wasn't locked. And once again, you know, that was his discipline.
Did you see him treating these children in such atrocious fashion?
I did witness those things, yes, sir.
Did you ever try to intervene?
Maybe a couple of times. I was so afraid of him. No.
At what point did y'all become a couple, a spiritual wife? Did you go through a ceremony?
Well, it wasn't quite a ceremony, no. He wrote up some type of a contract.
Now, this was months after you had witnessed him derogating and beating your son.
Yes, sir.
And that you had seen him starving and beating his own children.
Yes, sir.
You entered into a consensual and willing relationship with him.
Yes, sir. And it was very bizarre, and because even today when I think about it, it's like, you know, you must have been out of your mind. You develop some type of, I don't know what they call it now, Stockholm Syndrome, when you kind of just go along with your captor.
There was this letter that you were able to pass to a postal worker at the end.
Yes.
And that triggered the police coming.
Exactly.
And that triggered everybody getting arrested, everybody getting rescued out of the house.
Exactly.
And you've gone through years of therapy.
Yes.
And that's why you do the work that you do as an advocate for domestic violence.
Yes, sir.
The children who lived in this house a house of torture is the only way you can describe it, are going to come and meet up with Laura for the first time since they were rescued. We're going to talk to them when we come back.
Laura paints a picture like she was being abused in the home, and that is not correct.
She was able to eat while my father starved us. Laura was ever held hostage.
What Laura needs to do is start telling the truth.
It's important for people to know she's a fraud.
You had your time to talk. It's our time to talk. You've been all over everywhere talking. It's our time. You got that?
Tomorrow on an all-new Dr. Phil.
If our marriage can't be fixed on the show, I am ready to divorce next week.
No pressure on me.
With a marriage at stake.
The night I went to Mark's house, I think he had a woman in there.
It didn't happen. You've got text messages to prove it.
The clock.
This door was open, so you think that somebody went running out this back door
is ticking.
I said, let me in the house, and he wouldn't let me in.
That's tomorrow.
I'm now an advocate for abused and battered women, and I started a foundation. My foundation's name is the Laura Cowan Foundation, and it's really a teaching tool that brings awareness about battered women and domestic violence. My message always is a message of hope and never to give up. No matter what situation they find themselves in, there is always a way out.
Domestic abuse advocate Laura Cowan is here with us today, describing the horrific details of the years she claims she spent trapped with her children in an abusive home she could not escape. She finally got a letter to the police through a postal worker. Laura and all the children were then freed of the daily beatings, starvation, rape, and brutal conditions in what was described as one of the most notorious child abuse cases in California history. Now, 8 of the children are here joining us for an exclusive interview to speak out for the first time ever about the torture they suffered at the hands of their father, convicted child abuser Mansa Musa Muhummed.
Mansa would constantly hit me. He would slap me.
I am angry with Laura. Laura is a big liar. Laura paints a picture like she was being abused in the home, and that is not correct.
She was able to eat while my father starved us.
She was part of what was going on. Laura never did us. She certainly instigated the beatings. If we were still food in terms, she would tell my father and we would be beaten.
It's important for people to know she's a fraud, she's a liar, and making people think that she was battered, and she wasn't.
I'm glad to meet y'all, but the things that y'all have been through and the things that you have lived are just horrific, and I'm so sorry for that. One of the things that I'm always very sensitive to is ever putting victims of abuse together with someone that they consider an abuser and a perpetrator in their own lives. And this is an odd situation because Laura is here as a declared domestic violence advocate, but in fact, the 4 of you and all of you that we're going to talk to in a minute actually don't consider her that way at all, if we're just being completely honest, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yet all of you wanted to be here, and you wanted to talk about this, right?
Yes.
So you're okay being here with her?
Yes.
Laura has just been lying that she'd been abused, and she was helping my father with some of the abuse. That when you first met us, you did not help us.
You're saying that she is not telling the truth?
She's not telling the truth.
That she was not abused?
No.
That she was not held captive?
No, she was not. She was able to leave the home. She was able to leave the home, go shopping, grocery shopping. If you see children being tortured, eat their feces, if you see that we starving for weeks at a time, I mean, we had to get in circles and beat each other.
But you're saying there was an adult in the house that could come and go as she wanted to and did nothing?
Yes.
She's turning the story around. Everything that happened to us, she's saying that it happened to her. My sister was raped by my father. My sister, for years, was raped by my father. And she's saying now it's her. The beatings, the getting thrown in the garage, that was us that got thrown in the garage. She never was in the garage. She had a refrigerator in her room that we used to take food from, your refrigerator. And you know it, Laura. Too many times we took food from your refrigerator and you would tell my dad. And we would get beat. This is sick. You know what we had to go through? Our parents left us with no education. We have lived on the streets. We have ate out of trash cans. We have did everything, but we stuck together. Nobody was there for us. Nobody. Let's stop playing this game. You can fool these people, but you know you can't fool us.
Laura, what do you say about what they're saying?
That they're absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. That is not true, Dr. Phil. I didn't even have a refrigerator.
Well, is it true?
Okay.
Yes.
Is it true?
It's true.
Is it true?
She had a refrigerator.
Now, like I said, we were in different locations. But in that garage, Dr. Phil, that's where I was held captive. That's where the torture began for me. That's where we were locked up in there with chains on that garage door that I could not get out of.
The things that she's saying that he did to her, he never did.
I can't believe that you're saying that my father, he raped you, and you had a relationship in front of us. You wanted my dad to leave my mother. You said it many times. What do you think we didn't hear? When we go through things like that, you're not going to forget, Laura.
I didn't want your father.
Well, my mother, when you told my father on multiple occasions,
That's
25 years you've been with her, you got all these kids, it's time for us. How come we all remember that? How come all of my mother's children is saying the same thing? But then you had your time to talk. It's our time to talk. You've been all over everywhere talking. It's our time.
Then talk.
You got that? It's our time. So you be quiet. You be quiet. You be quiet.
So this is what this is all about. It's just a really an attack on me.
Did you get caught up in this at the time and become a confederate of the abuser?
I got caught up into fear, Dr. Phil.
Laura was a part of what my dad was doing to us.
And later, what did you find behind that door?
I was a very new investigator at the time. I wasn't prepared for what I found, and I've never seen anything this severe and gruesome since that day.
Did you get married when you were broke, but now you're successful? Or are you already financially secure and getting ready to tie the knot with someone who is not? Are you worried about what will happen to your money if your marriage fails? If you've asked your partner to sign a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement and you didn't get the reaction you hoped for, or you want to ask but you're afraid to, email me at drphil.com. I think these are very open wounds with these then children, now adults. And I think when we look at the list of things that he was convicted of, that he perpetrated on all of you children, and you're Sharon, correct?
Yes.
And Tiffany?
Yes.
And Nkosi?
Yes, sir.
And Christopher, right? If we look at the list, what he was accused of, that he starved these children, locked them in their room with nails for days, beat the bottom of their feet, beat them on bare knuckles with boat paddles, beat with extension cords, switches, and belt buckles, made the children stand on their knees all night, buried Delmarcus and Michael in a hole, made children fight each other, got children drunk, humiliated them while they were naked, made to stand in a corner, made to urinate in a bottle or plastic bag, made the children hit themselves in the forehead with a 15-pound weight, prevented from leaving the house or looking out the window, cut a child's thumb, sewed up Crystal's head wound with a needle and thread, hung upside down from a rope with a military knot, sexually abused Lakeisha for 12 years, from 14 to 26, broke Delmarcus' wrists, made to fight each other, as I said, forced Sharon to eat her own feces, made to lie on stomachs with feet in the air and beat their feet, locked in a closet, laundry room, bedroom, garage for days without food. I mean, this is just part of these things, and you don't dispute that any of that happened, do you?
Oh, no. I'm quite sure. Majority of that I've seen. Not all of it, but yeah. Musa did do those things, and to my son as well.
And my point is, you understand their pain and open wounds, and they're saying you were an adult in the home, and while they're grateful that you delivered the letter after 4 years that led to everyone being released, you're all glad of that, right?
Yes, yes,
you're
sir.
all glad that she wrote the letter, correct?
Yes, sir.
We're God-fearing people, and me personally, I believe God works through people, whether they're good or bad, and I feel like God worked through her to help us,
right?
Because she manipulated the situation for her own use, and everything that she's saying, it's not true. It's not true. Laura was a part of what my dad was doing to us.
You said earlier that you think you fell victim to what you referred to as Stockholm Syndrome. Yes. Did you get caught up in this at the time and become a confederate of the abuser?
I got caught up into fear, Dr. Phil, because he would threaten me. He would threaten my children. He would tell me if I ever tried to leave, he would go after them. If he didn't find me, he would go after them.
Sharon, you were the most malnourished, correct?
Yes.
And at the time, we were talking about at the time that you were rescued, you only weighed 48 pounds. What did you do for food?
Sometimes I went in the refrigerator and tried to get some food, and when my father caught me, he beat me down. Or sometimes when they had the locks on the cabinet, I would try to stick my small hand through the thing to try to get some food out of there.
What kind of food did y'all get?
But Laura got to cook all the time in the kitchen. I mean, she consistently cooked food. And she would prepare meals for her son and for herself and also for her daughter. You know, there's a lot of things that I know Laura, she's not going to, you know, tell you. She's not going to tell you the truth because she hasn't told the truth now. And
I didn't tell her the truth. When somebody says to you, no.
You had your time to talk.
When someone
You've been
says
talking
to you,
the whole time, Laura.
And you still force yourself
to the
on
grocery
you,
store,
that's
Laura.
rape.
And it would be me, my father, and you. We would have one buggy for 13 children.
If you tell someone no,
you would have a buggy for yourself.
You don't want to have sex with them, and they still proceed to have sex. That's rape. Yes, it is.
You just sat here and said that you had consensual sex with them. That's how you know you're lying. Then you manipulated and go say you was raped. This is what was done to her.
Oh, no.
It was never done to you.
No, it was done to me.
And you knew my dad was raping my sister, and you didn't do nothing about it.
You have the right to tell your side of this, and I want to hear it. We're going to take a break and hear from Laura. We're going to meet the investigator who was the first on the scene the day the children were finally rescued. I want to hear from Nicosia. I want to hear from Chris. I want to hear from all of the kids here. But what did this investigator see when he walked through that door? We're going to find out when we come back.
Mansa's children claimed that I was not raped by him, and I was.
If Laura says she was raped, then she is a liar.
The relationship she had was consensual.
Mansa's children claimed that I was not raped by him, and I was. In the beginning, with their father, we had a consensual relationship, but at the end, I was raped.
If Laura says she was raped, then she is a liar. I will watch she and my father kiss, touch, hug, laugh with my own eyes.
I was very terrified of Mansa.
Laura was never raped by my father.
The relationship she had was consensual. She wanted to be the #1 wife. She was jealous of my mother. I believe that out of jealousy that she's fabricating these lies.
I feel bad for my sister when she thinks that she's a product of rape when she's a love child.
Well, Laura says that is absolutely not true. She says she is proud of her work as a domestic abuse advocate. She says she was not perfect and was a victim, but has done a lot of work to heal herself so she can pay it forward and help others in her life now. Now, joining us is Sergeant Zirkle of the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, who was the first person on the scene when the children were finally rescued from this house of torture. Sergeant Zirkle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I cannot even imagine what you found when you opened that door.
I wasn't prepared for what I found. I knew that I was responding to a domestic violence call. I was a very new investigator at the time. I remember as soon as I walked in the door, immediately to my right, there was the door that went into the garage. There was evidence that that door had been nailed shut from the inside of the home. I remember going into the kitchen and seeing evidence on the cabinets that there had been eye bolts and locks put in the doors and the cabinets so that nobody could get to the food unless they were unlocked. I remember finding chains, padlocks on all the doors, windows screwed shut. It was very obvious that no one from the inside of that home could have gone anywhere outside the home unless they were allowed to do so. I remember seeing on the refrigerator eye bolts where it was chained and padlocked closed. I remember going into the garage. It was a 3-car garage that was divided into 2 separate living areas. No way to get from the garage to the inside of the home. There was a man door, an exterior door that went out to the side yard. That was nailed shut from the outside. On the inside of those living quarters, like I said, made into 2, it was very obvious that people had been there a long time. 1-gallon jugs filled with human urine, plastic bags filled with human feces. And then on the inside of the home, all these children, I had no way of telling how old they were. It wasn't for quite a while that we actually were able to find out what these poor kids had gone through. Tremendous ordeal. I'd never seen anything like that prior to that day, and I've never seen anything this severe and gruesome since that day.
How did the children react to you when you came in?
They were obviously frightened of me. They didn't know what was going to happen. I got the impression that I wasn't the first police officer that they'd seen. They were very standoffish. I remember some of them refused to speak to me at all. In the home, they were almost militarized. There was almost boys on one side, girls on the other. They didn't speak unless they were spoken to. If I asked them something, I was usually given a 1-word answer. They were not receptive to me, which didn't surprise me.
Was he there?
He was not in the home when I got there. He had already been detained prior to me getting there. He was actually handcuffed, seated in the back of a black and white outside the home.
Was he at all apologetic? Was he defiant? Was he, how was he?
He was defiant. It took a long time before we realized what we were actually dealing with, that all these kids had gone through a long period of time. So at that time, he was professing his innocence and saying that he had done nothing wrong, and he was telling me that anything I was told by anybody other than him was a lie.
Were you at the house when they came in?
The police? Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they knocked on the door. I remember vivid. He said, "I wanted to talk to you," Officer Fogle did. And I kind of motioned behind me, you know, that I can't talk, you know, and Moose is right there. But he picked up on it, and he had the other officer to detain him there. He took me on the side of the house, and he told me, he asked me then about this letter that they received. Did you write it? And I said, yes, I wrote it. And I have tapes too, recordings of what happened, because I had recorded all the beatings in the home prior to that.
They say you broke up with their father at different times over the 4 years and would go off and live somewhere else and then come back.
Tomorrow on an all-new Dr. Phil, with a marriage at stake.
I am ready to divorce next week.
The clock is ticking.
He took a polygraph. You think he's having an affair? We're going to find out.
That's tomorrow.
Mansa's children think that I'm some sort of a villain. If anything, I'm just a poor victim.
I feel like, Lord, he's very cruel. What you're doing, capitalize on people that have been abused.
What hurts me the most, his children, just not understanding and believing what happened. They're in total denial. If it had not been for my efforts, I think the children would still be in that situation today or even dead.
If Laura was truly a hero, she would have done something to stop the abuse. She's a liar, a manipulator, and she's an abuser just like my father.
Laura, you've heard these children, now adults, say that they felt like you have misrepresented your history in that house and your role in their being abused. They've said you failed to stop it, you sometimes facilitated or encouraged it, and that you've misrepresented the fact that you were held hostage because they say you came and went. And in fact, they say you broke up with their father at different times over the 4 years and would go off and live somewhere else and then come back.
Dr. Phil, in the beginning, and like I said, Musa was very kind to me. In the beginning, he was helpful to me. Through time, things changed, Dr. Phil. That's all I can tell you. And I was so afraid of him because of the threats and the intimidation. I was fearful of him. I've been slapped, beaten, kicked by him many, many, many times. And to say For the children to say I was not raped, it's just bewildering to me, because I had a relationship with your father. That's not denied. But as time went on, I wanted out of that madness. I didn't want him to deal with me whatsoever. And when I said no to him, and from my understanding, when you say no, you don't want to be touched. When you say no, you don't want to have sex with someone, and they still put themselves on you. That's considered rape to me, Dr. Phil. And I didn't want anything to do with him, and he still forced himself on me many times in that garage.
Well, that would constitute rape, and in
the Phil show.
Did you have any idea when you walked through that door that it would be 11 years before you would walk back out it?
No. I've reached out to Michelle Knight, and we have done talks together. She knows my story very well. I can completely relate to what Michelle Knight went through, because we both went through the same thing. We were both held captive by a monster. Michelle was held captive for over a decade. And for me, I was held captive for 4 years. I know what it feels like to have your freedom taken away.
Absolutely.
Is that an accurate statement? Were you held captive for 4 years?
Yes, Dr. Phil. I was not allowed to go anywhere. I was held.
You commented in the first segment we were talking that the first year was somewhat unremarkable, and then it got really weird for the last 3 years.
Yes, yes.
And then you said I was held captive for 4 years, so I wonder if it was 3 years, not 4 years, that you were.
Okay.
I'm just doing the math.
You're right. You're right about that.
Laura gave birth to a daughter with Mansa Musa Muhummed. This young woman has not seen her siblings in 16 years. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Do you need Dr. Phil's help? Text Phil to 88500 and share your story for a chance to appear on the show. Standard message and data rates may apply.
This show without you, our studio audience.
If you are going to be in the Los Angeles area and you would like free tickets, go to drphil.com and click on Be in the Audience.
Because we have a lot of fun here, don't we?
Or you can call 323-461-PHIL. That's 323-461-7445.
My dad is Mansa Musa. I have never met my half-brothers and sisters. I would like to meet them one day.
What I want for Tasslimah is to have a relationship with her other brothers and sisters. I feel that it's important because they are her family.
Tasslimah, you have a lot of family in this room, yes. Actually, in terms of half-brothers and sisters. Have you had a desire to meet your brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have.
Tell me why that's been important. I can imagine, but I just want to hear from you.
It's always good to have family by your side.
Do you have any contact with the man that fathered you?
No, I don't.
And what do you know about him? Do you have any desire to have a relationship with him at all?
A relationship? No, I don't. I do want to meet him and ask him a few things.
What would you ask him if you had the opportunity to?
I would ask him why and what happened to you to make you want to do these things.
And do you have any questions for any of your brothers or sisters here?
Were you in the room when my mom was raped? Were you?
He wasn't in the room, but I could say...
So how dare you say she wasn't raped?
Our father did not rape your mom. You are not a child of a rape.
Yes, I was. How can you dare?
You're not.
It was no rape going on.
There was rape going on.
Yes, it was, and I've heard this story
I just
already.
told you. You heard what I just said?
Your story is all based on what you just said, what you heard that she told you, and what you read on the
Then act like it.
Act like
I don't call your mother a liar,
Was you there? Was you there? You were 9 months old. What happened to you, Tasslimah?
Okay, let me see.
What happened to you?
Hold on, let me say There's a lot of things that she needs to know
exactly
about
your
her
mama.
mother, even abusing her brother.
Listen.
She was a baby.
Dr. Phil?
She was a baby.
I came on the show because of sympathy for them. Not to be bashed, not to have my mother bashed.
Look, we your brothers and sisters. It don't matter.
This is my mother.
That's right, and that's why. I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm older than every last one of y'all, all my brothers and sisters. Let me tell you this right now. We don't want you to turn against your mom. That's your mom at the end of the day. It don't matter what. You're going to always ride for your mom. That's your mom. That's not our goal to come out here to have you going against your mom or nothing. No. What for what?
We want her to
We always want a relationship.
That's what we want.
We want a relationship with you. We could maybe be in contact with her because you're not an adult. We have to go through your mom to get through you.
This is what I want to say.
Okay.
If we are children that never had a normal childhood, we never had experience what everybody else experienced in their childhood. We was deprived of all of that. But when you get an adult to come in your home and recognize it, and even though she said she wasn't allowed to leave and all the good stuff, okay, give her a benefit of the doubt there, okay? But you did not call the police or try to get some help. Why? You has not answered that question. Why? Do you think it, please? Also, tell me, why didn't you? Tell me the times that you left for those 2 weeks at that time that you left. You did not get help.
She never.
Why? Just tell me that. I really want to understand this because really me, if somebody was doing something to my kids and anybody else, the time I got to get out of that damn house, Lord have mercy, I would got some help. So you need to tell me why.
I think that you need to apologize to all of me and my brothers and sisters for what you have got on TV and lied about to hurt all of us, even to the point of lying on my father, saying what my father did to you, and telling our sister that she's a child of rape. It's not right.
Okay, when we come back, I'm going to wrap this up, tell you what I think, and we're going to look at two writings real quickly. The letter that Mansa Musa Muhummed wrote to Lakeisha, and something that Crystal wrote down in a diary so many years ago. We'll be right back. Want to know what's coming up on Dr. Phil? Visit our website and subscribe to our email newsletter. You'll get weekly updates, life strategies, and exclusive video that you won't find anywhere else.
Plus, on drphil.com, you can see sneak previews of upcoming shows. Log on today.
There was a letter that Muhammad wrote to Lakeisha on July 29th of 2013, and just a few excerpts. Dear Lakeisha, Kiki, nickname, you know that I never turn against my own blood or children. I don't care what anyone may say. The love for my children will never change. I know that you thought that I was mad at you for what you had to do, but I wasn't at all. You were under so much pressure, I know. Daddy did love you. How did you feel when you read that letter?
I felt like he wrote the letter and he's still in denial. It's all about just still the mind games.
Crystal kept a diary. And on May 12th, 1996, 8:30 p.m., she wrote this. And you were known sometimes as Tasslimah.
Right.
She wrote, every morning, Tasslimah keeps getting up, yelling at everybody in the whole house by calling us no good bastards and sons of bitches. Wish she would really stop. Plus, every day she tells my dad lies on us. Then she came in us girls' room, beating us with her shoe. She can't stand us because we're all short-cutted freaks. That was written in 1996, and there were a lot of entries like that. You 8 feel that Laura is being less than honest in her recounting her role in what happened during the 4 years that she was involved in your lives. You do know Mansa Musa Muhummed, and you do know, can we agree that he is an evil, abusive, mean, vicious, hurtful person?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I absolutely have zero doubt that he victimized everyone that crossed his path. and you, in your own description, say, you know, maybe it was Stockholm Syndrome, maybe I acted out of fear, you can understand their perception.
I can understand that.
We've developed a company here called Doctor on Demand. We're using your smartphone or your computer. There's an app you can get at iTunes or Google Plays, and you can push a button, and within a matter of seconds, you can be face-to-face with a board-certified doctor for medical needs, or you can set appointment with licensed doctoral-level therapist that you can talk to from wherever you are in the world. And for every one of you, I'm going to set up that relationship so every one of you, from the privacy of your own home, you have your own dedicated therapist. It's time that somebody stepped up and said, let's not forget these people, let's help them. And that starts today. Okay? Fair enough. I want to thank all of my guests today. A special thanks to Sergeant Richard Zirkle from the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. House of Horrors airs on Investigation Discovery. Keep an eye out for new episodes with Season 3 returning next year. We will see you next time. Thank you for being here. Thank you, man. I'm so proud to meet you. So proud to meet you, man. Thank you so much. Lord, thank you. Tasslimah, it is so good to meet you. Christopher, good to meet you, man. Kelsey, thank you. It's good to meet you. Thanks so much. Good to meet you. Thanks so much.